Hi, folks. This is Evan Elderbrock with the Oregon Department of Forestry's Urban and Community Forestry Program. And today I'm going to be doing an updated video for submitting claims for the All Entities Subaward program with the Urban and Community Forestry Program. There have been some slight changes to the claims documents that are required. So I thought doing an updated video would help folks stay current on what we're asking for. So to begin with, I'm going to share my screen here so you all can see. This is the landing page for the Subaward program portal, online portal. As a reminder, you can access this page using the URL. So I recommend bookmarking this URL in your browser of choice. You can also get to this portal landing page by going to the UCF Subaward program website. And there's this big green button that says Online Grant Portal that'll take you right there. And while we're here, I just thought I'd mention if you scroll down a little bit, there's an All Entities Subaward Program drop-down menu. And in that drop-down menu, there are all of the documents that we have for this program. Whenever we update documents, we repost them to the same URL. So I recommend bookmarking these URLs rather than downloading the forms to get the most current version whenever you look at them. All right, so for the topic of today, we are going to go over the claims process for reimbursement requests, advance payment requests, and advance payment verification. And just as sort of a heads up, we've been in the process of updating some of our documentation, including the Claims 101 General Information and Supporting Documentation form. And this form will now have a claim submission checklist. So you can review this checklist every time you submit a claim to make sure that you have all the required components. This is the same checklist that we will use to approve claims. So um, please check this out and review it with each claim to make sure that you can check each of these items off the list. And again, you can access that checklist at the Claims 101 link on the UCF Subaward website. All right, back to the topic at hand. So if you're going to submit a claim on the portal, first you're going to have to sign in using your username and password. And the next thing you'll do is go to the Grants tab on the left-hand side of the page. This will show you any grants that you are affiliated with in the portal, and then open up the grant of choice that you would like to submit a claim for. So you click on that grant, and then you'll see all the various components of the grant. And today we are looking at the claims component of the grant. So click on claims, and you will see a list of all previously submitted claims with their status. Um, so if you're going back to a previously submitted claim, you can scroll to it and click on it. Today, we're going to be creating new claims for reimbursement requests, advance payments requests, and advance payment verifications. So to create a new claim, you will click on the green Add Claim button. And from there, you'll start to fill out the general information form. The first thing you'll note is what type of claim you're submitting. This one, we are going to be submitting a reimbursement, but you can also submit advance payment request or advance payment verification. You're going to enter the dates um, for the expenditure period. So for this particular claim, I'm going to do September 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. So quarter four is my reimbursement request for quarter four. And then lastly, um, the default for is this your final request is no. So unless this is the last claim that you're making on the project, please just leave that as it is, clicked on no, and then you can proceed from there. If this is your final claim, then you can toggle that over to yes, but that probably won't be the case for many of you for a couple years. All right, from here you can save the general information form by clicking the green Save Form button. And this will bring you to the components of the claim. And for a reimbursement request, there are four components. There's the general information form that you just completed. There's the detail of expenditure, which is basically where you enter all of the line items and expenses that you've made during this expenditure period. There's the reimbursement request form, which has you enter your sam.gov UEI, upload a proof of active status in sam.gov, and then provide a summary of how the expenditures on this claim are things that were in the proposal and in the subaward agreement. So we'll get to that in a little bit. And then lastly, the supporting documentation. If the expenditures you've made require supporting documentation, you'll upload them here. But as a reminder, you do have to complete all of these, even if you don't have any supporting documentation required. There's a simple yes/no question that you'll complete here, and you will need to do that in order to submit the claim. Because you can see right now in big red here, claim cannot be submitted currently. Claim components are not complete. So the only claim component that is currently complete is the general information. We still need to do the detail of expenditure, reimbursement request form, and supporting documentation. And once we've completed and marked all of those as complete, this red section here will turn green and you will see a submit claim button up here. So let's work through this together. First, we're going to go to the detail of expenditure form. All right, and you'll see this looks a lot like the budget that you created when you submitted the application. There is a budget category for each of the budget categories in the software. So you have personnel, fringe benefits, travel, supplies, contractual, other costs, which is the equipment rental and stipends, other costs not including equipment rental and stipends, subawards eligible for indirect costs, and subawards not eligible for indirect costs. And then lastly, the indirect cost category. I will note that you need to enter the indirect cost category at the end or update it at the very end after you've entered all direct costs, because the calculation for indirect costs does not auto update. So it does require you to create the line item and then go back into it and save it. So I'll show you all of that here. But first things first, let's enter all of our direct costs for this particular claim. So on this claim, let's say on my grant, all I had were personnel doing some work for planning and planting, and maybe we'll have a couple of trees or something like that that we planted. All right, so first things first, I'm going to add the person's time. So I'll hit add entry. And just as a reminder, you can only enter line items that are in your budget. So if there are things that you want to add to your claim that are not in your budget, you need to go through an amendment modification request, and we can sort through that together to get that updated. But you can only claim stuff that is in your budget. So for me, I'm going to start off with the urban forester position. And maybe I'll put this is salary for 2025 Q4, October through December. And then I realized I made a mistake back on my general information form, so we'll want to go change that. But I'll get to that in a second. The unit type is going to be hours. Let's say the unit cost is $50 an hour, and the urban forester worked 20 hours on this project in Q4. So I'm going to hit save. And what you'll see is we'll have a $1,000 line item added for the urban forester position. Now, I will have fringe benefits for this position as well, but I do want to just show you how the indirect cost calculation works. So we're going to go down to do that now just to show you how it works, and we'll come back up to the fringe benefits in a sec. So if you enter your indirect costs before entering all of your direct costs, it will only do the calculation based on the direct costs that have already been entered. So for example, if we go to indirect costs and add an entry at our indirect cost rate of 10% for this particular award and hit save row, you'll see an indirect cost line item of $100, which is 10% of that $1,000 pay for the urban forester position that I entered above. Now, if we were to go enter our fringe benefits for that position, let's just go ahead and do that now. So we'll do add entry. Fringe benefits for the urban forester. Short description is urban forester fringe benefits at 30% of salary. And the unit type is going to be 30% of salary. And the unit cost then is 300 because our salary was 1,000. Number of units is 1. That's one way to do it. There's many ways to do this. This is kind of not the best, but I'll just put it in for now as an example. So what you'll see now is that we've accrued $300 of additional direct costs in the way of fringe benefits for the urban forester position. But if you scroll down and look at the indirect costs, that calculation did not change at all. It's still just $100, which is 10% of the salary, but not including the fringe. So in order to get that to update, you need to click into the indirect costs line item and then hit save row again, and then it will update to include all eligible direct costs. So you'll see now that we've updated it, it says $130. So let's say that those are the only expenses that I accrued during this quarter. I can be finished with my details of expenditure form. You can always review the totals in the claim summary, which you can see all of the budget categories in bold, and then all of the line items in normal font beneath the budget categories. So for this particular grant, we only have one line item in each of the budget categories, but it tells you the line item amount and then the total for the budget category. In the grant budget awarded column, that's how much money has been awarded for this particular subaward. The expenses this period is what we've charged. So you can see we charged $1,000 for that personnel, $300 for fringe benefits, and then $130 for indirect costs. And that takes the total claim to $1,430. And then you can see your prior expenses and your available balance, and so on and so forth there. But now that we're complete with the details of expenditure, we can click any of these mark as complete buttons, and it will then add the complete check mark next to the detail of expenditure form. So we can now move on to the reimbursement request form. So I'm going to click into the reimbursement request form now, and we'll just peruse the form briefly, but there are kind of just 5 questions. You need to enter your UEI number, so your SAM.gov unique entity identifier. Then you need to attach a screenshot demonstrating active status in SAM.gov. We're asking for a summary for each expense listed in the details of expenditure for how that particular expense contributed to achieving the project activities and outcomes outlined in the subaward agreement. And this is really important. For us to approve any claim, we need to be able to connect each expenditure with the scope of work outlined in the subaward agreement. Then we have an optional question. If you have any financial or administrative issues that might impact project spending, you can enter them here. And then a certification that the information provided here is true, complete, and accurate. So first things first, we'll enter our UEI. This is the ODF, unique entity identifier. So I'm going to enter that. And then for the SAM.gov verification, this is an opportunity for me to show you that within the UCF Subaward program website in the All Entities dropdown, we have a document called sam.gov status tutorial. And that document walks you through how to um, get your sam.gov active status verification. But I can show you that really briefly. If you go into sam.gov and you sign in, mine's going to require a dual authentication. So I'm going to just do that really quickly here. And once you are in, you can click on the search button and type in the unique identifier number. So that is the one for ODF. So I'll enter that and you'll see what pops up is the name of the organization. And you'll see this little green active registration. You see the expiration date, as well as some other information about the organization. So what I'm going to do is just take a little screenshot of that. And then I'm going to save it. And I don't think that it accepts PNGs, so I'm going to save this as a JPEG. And we're going to call it ODF UEI. Save it in downloads is fine. And let's go back to web grants. And we're going to upload that file now. So here's the ODF UEI. We're going to add it. And so we can move on to the next question, which is summarize how each expense listed in the details of expenditure form contributed to achieving the project activities and outcomes. All right, so this is where we need to discuss and summarize how the urban forester salary and fringe, let's say for this particular subaward, right now what we're up to is planning for our late winter, early spring tree planting. So the urban forester conducted community outreach and planning to identify locations for the 100 street trees that will be planted in January through March 2026. So that, assuming that in the subaward agreement, in the activities and outcomes, we talk about community outreach and planning for identifying tree planting locations, then this helps to demonstrate that the expenses incurred on this claim connect directly to the scope of work outlined in the subaward agreement. All right, next up, financial or administrative issues. We don't have any currently, so I'm going to just say NA for that. But this would be the place where you could enter those. And then I will say that I've read and acknowledged this statement. So then we can save the form. And after you save the form, you are able to mark it as complete with that orange check mark. So let's do that. And now our reimbursement request form is complete. And it's time to finish the supporting documentation piece. So I'm going to click into supporting documentation. And here, there's one question to begin with, which is, does this claim require supporting documentation? We've updated our requirements for supporting documentation. Not every budget category requires supporting documentation to be submitted with the claim. If you're not sure, please consult the Claims 101 document. The link is right here in Web Grants, and you can also get to it on the UCF Subaward page in Claims 101. So let's just click on that link. And what you'll see is on pages 3, 4, and 5 is a table with all the different budget categories. The middle column is supporting documentation, what needs to be submitted with a claim, and then the far right column is what you need to keep on record. And please note that you should retain all documents on record related to expenditures in case of an audit or a desk review by ODF monitoring staff, but you can read through what sort of supporting documentation you should be keeping in your records for each budget category. For the purposes of submitting claims, however, this middle orange column is what you'll want to look at. So in the case of this particular claim, I entered personnel, fringe benefits, and indirect costs. And what you can see is that we do not require supporting documentation for personnel. We do not require supporting documentation for fringe benefits. And we do not require documentation for indirect costs. So for this particular claim, no supporting documentation is required. However, if you had supplies or contractual costs or other costs or subawards, we do ask that you submit receipts or invoices with those particular budget category line items. So I'm going to go back to web grants, and since I identified that I do not need to submit supporting documentation, I will say, no, this claim does not require supporting documentation and hit Save Form. Now, what you will see appear, whether you hit yes or no, is this supporting documentation table, where if you do need to submit supporting documentation, you can add attachments and select a file from your records, pull in all those receipts and invoices, add a description so that we know what this particular supporting documentation is referencing from your details of expenditure, and you can save that. And once you've completed all of that uploading of supporting documentation, you can mark this section as complete as well. And once you've done that, you will see that since all 4 sections are marked as complete, the claim is in compliance and is ready for submission. So I recommend reviewing your claim at this point. You can go through claim preview or go through form by form, but if you click on claim preview, you will see kind of all the details of expenditure. There's our $1,000 for personnel, fringe benefits, and our indirect costs, as well as the claim summary, and then our reimbursement request form with all those details that we entered, and then the no supporting documentation. So when you're ready to submit, you'll have to go back into the claim and click Submit Claim. And you can click Submit, and that will then send that claim off into the to-do list for the community assistance forester responsible for your program. And they will review it and get back to you if they need any additional changes to that claim, or they will approve it and send it along to the next steps in the process. So that's the reimbursement request. Now let's walk through an advance payment request. So I'm going to go to grants. I'm going to do these ones a little faster just because we kind of walked through all of that. But let's go back to our claim. And we're going to add a new claim. And this time we're going to do an advance payment request. Let's do, this is going to be projected for the first quarter of the new year, 01/01, 2025. And 03/31, 2020. And by 2025, I mean 2026. And then this is not my final request, so I'm going to save the form. And you'll notice here, this is very consistent with the reimbursement request, but we have the detail of expenditure, the advance payment request form, and supporting documentation. So for the details of expenditure, you would enter your projected costs, or if you have a known invoice that you're going to need to pay or something like that, you can add those here. Let's say that for this particular subaward, I'm paying personnel and fringe and such through reimbursement, but I'm paying for my large contracts through advance payment. So we've got this big contract here. So let's say that I know from my contractor, they are going to spend $25,000 in quarter 1. Let's call this like tree planting contract. Short description, contractor to plant 100 trees in Q1 2026. So the unit type is contract or invoice. The unit cost, let's say that's going to be $25,000. And the number of units is 1. So we're going to save that. And what you'll see is that we have that contractual line item added. Let's say that's the only thing we're going to have for our advance payment requests. Please remember that on every single claim, you should enter a line item for indirect costs. The calculation will take place automatically. So even if the budget categories you selected don't have indirect costs associated, it will just come out to 0. So it's always worth entering an indirect cost line item and let the software do the calculation for you. And as a reminder, always enter the indirect cost at the end or update the indirect cost line item at the end so that the software can calculate based on all the direct costs. All right, so we're going to add an indirect cost line. And at the 10% indirect cost rate for this agreement, and I'll hit save row, and you will see that we now have $2,500 in indirect costs. We're going to just go look through the claim summary. We see $2,500 in indirect costs and our $25,000 in our contractual. And that's all we've got for this particular claim. So we can mark this as complete. Then we're going to move on to the advance payment request form. And there's a little bit more to the advance payment request form than the reimbursement request form, as you'll see. But similarly, we have the UEI requirement. So I walked through all of this in the reimbursement request section. So if you skipped over that, but you still want to know how to do this, you can check that out. But we need a screenshot to verify your UEI status. And we'll wait for my computer. And then we'll pull up the UEI screenshot. Then there's a certification statement that advance payment is needed to fund this project's operation. I have read and acknowledged the statement to be true. And then you need to clearly describe why this advance payment is necessary and the timeline for completing the funded work. So you could say something like our org does not have adequate capital to front the funds for the large tree planting contract. The contractor has agreed to plant the 100 trees between January 1 and March 31, 2026, and estimates a $25,000 total cost for this planting. All right. Next up, have you made previous advance payments requests? In this case, I'll say no, but if you have made previous advance payment requests, then you need to, if funds from previous advance payment requests have not been completely liquidated, clearly explain why funds have not been spent and describe the spending timeline for completing the remaining funds. So this could be that, maybe we're only halfway through Q4 of 2025, and I had requested an advance payment for Q4, but the contractor hasn't finished their work for this quarter yet, so I can't actually fully pay them out for it until the quarter is finished. But to ensure continuity of services, I need to make this request before the end of Q4. So you can outline that information here. And then we'll move on to the next question, which is summarize how the expenses listed in the details of expenditure form will contribute to achieving the project activities and outcomes. And as a reminder, this is the same as with the reimbursement request form. To approve any claim, the UCF program needs to be able to connect each expenditure with the scope of work outlined in the subaward agreement. So Please make reference to the activities and outcomes listed in the subaward agreement. So for this, I will say like tree planting contract. The tree planting contract facilitates the planting of 100 trees. Let's say 100 street trees in the disadvantaged communities outlined in the agreement. These 100 trees represent 25% of the total trees to be planted for this project, 400 total. Something like that. This just tells the community assistance forester when they're reviewing this to look at your subaward agreement and say, hey, this tree planting contract of $25,000 is to facilitate the planting of these 100 street trees that we outlined in the agreement that we were going to plant 400. So that's just an example, but that helps us connect the dots so that we can approve this claim. Next, we've got a couple of certification statements. Advance payment requests must be submitted in accordance with the advance payment request process negotiated with ODF. Okay. All funds received through advance payment must be liquidated within 90 days of receipt of funds. Okay. The subrecipient is responsible for requesting advanced funds in a timely manner to support the operational budget. Okay. And then I certify to the best of my knowledge that the information is true, complete, and accurate. Okay. So once we've completed all those pieces, we can hit save form. And we can review our answers and then mark this as complete. And we still can't submit the form because the claim because we still need to enter supporting documentation. So again, if you're doing an advance payment request, it does not require supporting documentation. For a contract, as if we were to click into the Claims 101 document again, you would see that a contract does require an invoice or a receipt. But you can submit that invoice or receipt with the advance payment verification. It doesn't have to be with the advance payment request. But if you do have it at this time, like they already gave you the receipt for their Q1 work, you could submit it here. But we're going to say no, we don't have that invoice yet, and we're going to save. If you did say yes, you could add supporting documentation here, and once that's added, then you will mark this section as complete and you'll see this claim is ready for submission. So we're going to submit this advance payment request now. Hit submit and it's off. Okay, last but not least, we're going to go through an advance payment verification. So click on the claims module, hit add claim. This time we're going to do advance payment verification. This expenditure period was 01/26 through 03/26. This is not our final request, and hit save form. There's only 3 forms associated with this: the advance payment verification form and the supporting documentation form, in addition to the general information. So let's do the advance payment verification form. There's a few questions here. Again, we're asking for your UEI number, so you can enter that. Update the screenshot, and then have all funds provided in the advance payment been spent. For me, my tree planting contract, they planted all 100 trees and they requested $25,000, so no problem, yes. If this is a case where you haven't spent all of them, you would need to clearly explain why the funds have not been spent and describe the timeline for completing the remaining funds, the remaining work funded through this advance. So you'd explain that there in detail. I would also recommend, actually, we'll get to this in just a sec. So I'm going to say no because mine was pretty clear, but maybe yours will be not so clear, so you have still some funds remaining. The next question, were the projected costs in the advance payment request identical to the actual costs? So for mine, because I already knew that the contractor was going to invoice me for $25,000, the answer to that is um, yes, they were identical. But if the answer was no, then you would need to describe in detail any changes between the project spending in the advance payment request and the actual spending. So let's say that maybe it was only the contract only was $20,000, but then you used the additional advance payment to buy $5,000 in supplies. Um, we would want to know in detail what those supplies were, and you would need to submit the supporting documentation for them. I recommend, if you haven't already talked to your community assistance forester, reaching out to them, and they can provide you with an advance payment tracking spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet will um, help you identify what your projected costs were when you made an advance payment request, and then your actual costs. And submitting that as supporting documentation here will really help facilitate um, a smooth process here. Okay, and then just a couple last questions. Advance payment verification must be submitted in accordance with the advance payment schedule provided by ODF. I read and acknowledge the statement, and then I certify to the best of my knowledge and belief that the information provided herein is true, complete, and accurate. Okay, so I'm going to save that form. Again, mine was pretty simple because I just had one contractor and they spent exactly what they said they were going to spend, but that's not always going to be the case. It might get more messy. But for the example, I'm going to mark this as complete, and we need to attach supporting documentation. So since this is a contractual funds, I will need to provide supporting documentation. So I will attach, so you click the add new attachment. This is the invoice for tree planting in the trees in Q1 2026. There we go. And I'll select the file. Let's just pretend that this particular file is that invoice, and we'll save it. All right, now I've got my contract invoice entered. I will mark this as complete, and the claim is ready for submission. So I'm going to hit submit claim, and our advance payment verification is out the door. All right. So that covers the 3 different types of claims that could be submitted in web grants. As a reminder, the ODF, Urban Community Forestry Subaward Program's web page has all the documentation that we have for this program, so please consult that. Um, Particularly when it comes to claims, we've got a PDF tutorial, we'll have the video tutorial, this video posted, as well as progress report PDF and video tutorials. We have a reporting schedule template, an advanced payment schedule template, a Claims 101 document, and that SAM.gov status tutorial. So if you're not sure how to do something, please consult the UCF Subaward Program website, and then you can always reach out to your primary point of contact through the Urban Community Forestry Program. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you, and wish you all the best in submitting claims. And yeah, please reach out if you have any questions. All right, take care.